Stop the cap.
You forgot something.
Thank you.
Man, there's so many takes on this damn statue in New York of the black woman. I'm gonna bring things full circle because really, the timing of this statue, which I mean is completely unrelated, but the timing of this statue is interesting. Uh, be it the fact the movie Sinners came out and everybody was, well, I shouldn't say everybody, but a lot of women were in an uproar about, you know, Michael B. Jordan's depiction with Annie versus Michael B. Jordan's depiction with what was the white girl's name in that movie? Or the girl that played the Octoroon, the Steinfeld actress, right? And this piggybacks, right off of a lot of the criticisms that were made in Sinners, which is about the mammy depiction of black women, especially dark skinned black women, and how, asexual it is. And then, the contrast that was made in Sinners when it came to freaking, Stack's relationship versus Smoke's relationship. And I made a video, I made my first initial, I made the review of the movie and then in my initial thoughts. Then I made the second part about the representation because I started to see the grumblings and I knew it was going to be a problem when I was in the movie theater. I was like, this is going to be a problem. And then, after the movie was over, you had a bunch of people saying, I thought that it was his mom. I mean, I missed the part that they lost a child together. I was like, I don't get it. I mean, I saw The Rock with the little baby handprint on it, but I don't know. It didn't register. Like, I didn't know whether that was his aunt or whether that was, like a sibling that he lost. Like, it didn't make sense. And then when they had the, I just didn't get it. It didn't register with me the way it should have. And I kind of blame that on poor character development. Because the relationship between Smoke, and the light skinned chick. I mean the romantic tension was built up. The sexual tension was built up. I mean, she gets off the train and starts talking about, how you fucked me so good and you put your tongue in my cooch and, it was, you just like, God damn, clutch the pearls, gasp, and you wanted to really, get into, their relationship. Their relationship was way more interesting, right? And I'm kind of cutting into another video that I did because I ran it, like, I finally ended up having a conversation with Cap about the whole movie. And one of the things that stuck out to us, like in our discussion, at like mid as we're like exchanging ideas about this movie, and this goes back to what we've always said: you do not compare childless people to parents. Smoke and his girl were parents. All of the, yeah, I do feel it was a wasted opportunity where Smoke could have been with Pauline or a character like Pauline or a woman that looked like Pauline, and you just would have had a mirror relationship, one with a light woman, one with a dark woman, and you would have seen, some an equivalent of passion, for a dark skinned woman on screen. But the relationship that Smoke had with his, his estranged wife because they lost a child, like that's going to be a completely different dynamic that they're going to have with one another. I mean, they're past all of the games and all of the, I don't know how you really feel, and they're past all that. They were married, they had a child, and the child died. So that changes their whole interaction. So the people that wanted to see, Smoke's relationship look like Stack's relationship, it was never going to be that. It was never going to be that. And again, the woman who played Annie, she's 38 years old and she's a mother in real life. Steinfeld is 28 years old and she's childless. And I'm like, here we go back to the comparing mothers to childless women in terms of sex appeal. This simply should not be done. And this goes right back to that CDC report, that pointed out that 42% of black mothers become mothers under the age of 20. And I talked about how this affects, I'm not saying colorism doesn't exist. I'm not saying self hatred doesn't exist. I'm not saying black, inferiority complexes don't exist. But black women need to stop ignoring this aspect. Okay? When black men seem to have this delay in when they become fathers. Black men are very much bimodal when they become fathers. You got a handful that become fathers under the, not under the age of 20, because I think it's only 14% that become fathers underneath the age of 20 compared to black women's 42%. But most black men become fathers. I think it's between the ages of like 22 and 24, right? Black women, their median age is 22 when you even it out. You compare the under 20 to the women who wait a little bit longer, probably closer to the age of 30. Now, obviously, women have a different biological clock than men do. And so women are going to, of all races, are going to skew a little bit younger. The problem is a lot of black women are becoming mothers at extremely young ages. And so when a black man, at, 21, 20 years old, out, after high school, and they're out there and they're on the club scene and whatnot, when they look at these other races of women, they see childless women. They're looking at childless women. They're looking at women who are essentially stress free. That's what they're looking at. They're looking at women that can spend 3 hours in the gym working out. That's what they're looking at. When they're looking at black women, they're looking at a lot of women that are stressed, or a higher percentage of women that are stressed, a higher percentage of women who can't go to the gym and work out for 3 hours, and it shows. And that wears, and it cuts into the concepts and the ideas of black women's beauty, because even the young women begin to start looking very mammyish at a very young age. And because even when I close my eyes, and I said this years ago, when I close my eyes and you ask me to picture the average black woman, she's a mammy looking black woman. Like I have to literally go online, go out of my way on social media, and go on Instagram and follow a bunch of sisters, or follow a bunch of gym pages and gym, like fitness, like just black women working out, which seriously speaking, I would not see that in real life. Now, some people can argue, if I'm in a predominantly white area, obviously I'm not going to see a whole bunch of black women in the gym. Okay, so obviously I have to take into consideration the areas that I'm at, but the bottom line is, on average, black women do look like that statue. And it seems that, there's definitely some dissensions in the ranks. And there's women who look like the statue. There's women who don't look like the statue. There's women who look like the statue and don't agree with the statue. And then there's women who look like the statue and do agree with the statue. And then there's women who don't look like the statue and don't agree with the statue. And women who don't look like the statue and agree with the statue and think that it's not a problem. So there's complete dissension in the ranks when it comes to this statue. But I it doesn't get past me. Like when you compare it to the movie Sinners and Annie's depiction, and then you have a statue that basically looks like Annie, and the question that comes up, or the issue that comes up, is black women's the complex ways in which they feel about their desirability. And I just got finished listening to Six the Goddess's video, and I already knew what she was going to say. I already know where it's going to go, because she don't play with the whole black women being big and not wanting to play the game. There is an aspect of black women who don't want to compete. There's an aspect of, I mean, they just come up with a million excuses and justifications as to why they don't want to, be fit and in shape. And that's just what it is. And, Six broke down, everything that I've, previously said, and most men have already said, which is, these women are not the fantasy. Annie is not the fantasy. This statue is not the fantasy. Going back to the movie Sinners, you can see that there's a divide in the community in terms of how black women were viewing the romantic relationship between Smoke and Annie versus Stack's relationship with the Octoroon girl. I can't even think of what her name is. Mary, okay, with Mary. And you got to look at it like this. And this is what you have to keep in mind. You have to keep this in mind when we want to talk about black women's depiction and promotion, because there's two things going on. There's the outside, which is the global validation, and then there's the internal, which is like what goes on in the community. And there's definitely a miscommunication or misunderstanding, or hell, there's women who don't want to understand, as was proven in Six's video. And even the bigger woman, that she had the clip of, that was like trying to tell these women, like, you're not going to get high quality men, being big. They may, fuck around with you on the side. You know what I mean? I know guys right now, they love big women because they like women that got like the ginormous titties. You know what I mean? They love that shit, but they don't care for their gut. They don't care for their ass. They don't care for their shape. They don't care to be seen with the woman. All they want to do is slip they snake right down her big crack, right there, so the crack between her breasts. That's all they want to do. That's all they want to do. So a lot of these bigger women, they get the short end of the stick, but you got all this weird ass, like, super leftist body positivity, smash the patriarchy. We don't want to live up to the patriarchal standards. But then these women get mad when they lose in the global validation arena, or they lose when being compared to other races of women who, when it comes to other groups, they put their best foot forward. They put up the ideal. I was watching a Shay Sade clip about this, and you had a woman in there that was talking about, and again, these non-conforming black women, these anti-patriarchal, non-conforming black women, that they think that they're challenging the standards by having representation that they want to consider diverse. Nobody else is doing diverse representation when it comes to themselves. They're not. They may, out of 100 representations, they may let one slide and be like, okay, here's some diversity. But 99% of the time, they're going to put their best foot forward. In the black community, it's like it's 60 or 70% of the time we get the diverse representation of black women, and then the really, sexy black women that move black men, they don't have any representation. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that there's more mothers in the black community than childless women in the black community, especially at an early age. There's a lot of black women that look at that statue and they can relate to it because they look like that, because they have a baby or two and they gained a bunch of weight and they don't have time to work out and they don't have time to go to the gym. And when you go and you look at the movie Sinners, black men, if I got a bunch of childless black men that are like, yeah, man, let's go see Sinners and Michael B. Jordan, right? They like seeing Michael B. Jordan on screen because he represents, a masculine black man. This is not a gay character or a feminine character. Then on top of that, when you look at when you have a childless man that's watching the movie Sinners, what relationship do you think he's going to connect with more? Right? It just so happens that Mary was, light skinned. But even if you swapped out Mary with Pauline, what relationship do you think a childless black man sitting in that audience is gonna relate to? He's gonna relate to the childless relationship, because childless men can't relate to having a child, let alone losing a child, which is what happened with Smoke and Annie. Okay, they lost a child. They were grieving parents. Okay, it was all, as a childless man, watching them was kind of awkward, and it was just awkward. It was awkward, just trying to understand, their relationship, their feelings, and everything. As a childless man, I'm like, hey, I can't relate to that. I can relate to, Stax and Mary, right? I can relate to, their back and forth, their banter, the sexual tension. Oh, yeah, I totally relate to that. Smoke and Annie were a mature relationship. That was a mature relationship. They were married, they became parents, they had a child, and then and the well, having being parents and having a child, same thing. But and then the child passed away. And then they had to deal with those grieving feelings. You see? I don't know what parents go through, like a couple is together and then they lose a child. That's why he was asking, Smoke was asking, he was like, you got this talisman you got me wearing, but how come all your hoodoo, that shit didn't work to save our child? Right? As though he was almost blaming her, or blaming the inability of her magic to protect, their child from death. Now, we didn't get a background story as to why the child died and all that, but the whole thing is just, childless people can't relate to that. And then I do feel that the whole Smoke and Annie dynamic got the short end of the stick, for dark skinned black women, because, it's like, oh, they died, and, you show their spiritual ghost, like when, Smoke was at the end of the movie when he was dying, and then, he could see his wife and their dead child, and, he's on his way to heaven. He's just, in the transition phase as he's, dying or whatever. But then you have, Stack and Mary that basically get to live out the rest of their life as vampires, and they get to experience life. You know what I mean? Like, it's not really a win to win in death. Like, even though they're vampires, they can't go in the sunlight. They still got to circumvent everything that kept them apart initially, which was, the racism of the 1932 Mississippi South. Because you got to remember, Stack basically, got married off to a white man since she was passing, so that she would have a better life, because he recognized that they couldn't be together. That interaction at the train station, I told you to stay the fuck away from me. Like, chick, you gonna get us both killed. We can't be together. You look like a white woman. I'm a black man. It's 1932 Mississippi. Like, get the fuck on. You see? So it created that sort of Romeo and Juliet, we can't be together, which adds even more to the childless people can relate to that. They can relate to that type of dynamic. And when you have more childless men in the black community, especially at young ages, okay, then you can see where you have this problem where the black women are gravitating towards Annie and the black men are gravitating towards Mary, colorism notwithstanding. You see what I'm saying? It's unfortunate because, obviously colorism is always going to come up because, here we have yet again, the light-skinned woman being depicted as, feminine and fit and she's young and desirable, and because that's not being separated out, it just looks like lust for light skin or lust for a white woman. That's what it looks like. It just looks like lust for that, as opposed to where, on the other side you have, Annie, and it's going to look like rejection of a dark-skinned black woman. But then it's like she's older, she's a mother, right? She's what else? She just homely, not glammed up, none of the above. And it's just not something that a young man is gonna want. They're not gonna be into that. And the other thing with this whole, like, the statue thing, I looked at the artist, I looked at his body of work. He's into basically making statues of regular black people. This was not something where it's like, oh, let me just single out African Americans. I've seen people attacking the fact that he's British, or, Six brought up the fact that his wife is slim. I'm like, I don't think that has anything to do with it, because if you look at his body of work, if you look at the other statues that he's made, which are all basically in the same like vein of design, he makes he makes the artwork that just looks like regular black people, and you wouldn't even be able to tell the difference between a black person in the UK versus a black person in America in terms of his design. You should go and actually look at all of his statues. They're regular people. There's nothing fantastic about any of these statues. I think the problem is that black people, or black women in particular, are sensitive to how they're being depicted. The problem is there's no real organization on correcting this. The black women themselves are divided. That you have the women that are like, yes, we need to see more of this and diversity, not realizing that you are being compared and contrasted against other races of women, and other races of women don't depict themselves like this. They won't co-sign. Even if they are depicted like it, they won't co-sign it. I went online and I tried to find pictures of like plus size statues of white women. I couldn't find a single one. Or actually, no, there was one that I did find, but it wasn't really plus size. The woman, it looks like a white woman with a coat on her head. It's very weird. Statue. I mean, and her breasts are out. I mean, just breast out. Doesn't have the greatest shape, but I don't even know if I would consider it like plus size, because you will not find a statue that is as big as this statue, this 12-foot statue of this black woman. Even if you made her normal size, just in terms of her just being rotund. Okay, there is a problem in America with the way that black women, especially dark-skinned black women, are depicted. Hands down. I mean, that's not even debatable. It's not even debatable. But there are many black women, and I think it has to do with the fact that we have the majority of black women, 61%, of black women, are mothers, and only 39% under the age of 50, are childless. And so I feel like that takes over the conversation. Because the majority of black men, and this is the funny thing, right? Because the reputation of black men is like, we all got kids all over the place and we're just sexually irresponsible and don't take care of our kids. But the majority of black men don't have kids. And so think about the mismatch when it comes to desirability and what men actually like if you like the majority of voices that you're going to hear on the male side versus the majority of voices that you're going to hear on black women's side. The majority of the voices that you're going to hear on black women's side are going to represent mothers. The majority of the voices that you're going to hear on the black male side represent childless men. You see? And so when it comes to the depiction, of like what women want to be desired and accepted, okay, and what the men are focused on are going to be two different things. We're not meeting each other. We're not matching each other, for that reason. So this creates a very strange dynamic in the black community that severely gets overlooked. Like I said, you go back to the movie Sinners. Why are people comparing these relationships, and making it a light-skinned woman versus dark-skinned woman, when you have a childless couple versus a couple that lost a child? Those dynamics are going to be completely different. You're not going to see a whole bunch of passion and again, they're married. They've been married. They done already fucked in every room in the house or whatever. Like, they've already done all that. They're past the phase that Stack and Mary were in. And if you look at the two brothers, Stack and Smoke, which brother was the more mature brother, played by Michael B. Jordan? Which brother it was Smoke, obviously. Smoke was the more mature brother. right? Smoke, I believe, was the one that came up and was like, "Yo, we ain't making no money." You know what I'm saying? Like this is married men mentality. Married man mentality is, hey, you know what I'm saying? I got responsibilities. I got a wife. I had a child, right? And maybe they're gonna have another child, but it's like I came here to be about the business of making money. The movie Sinners is as much about capitalism as it is about vampires. If you really look at it, that's one of the reasons why I was so irritated with the movie. I'm like, really, vampires? So two black men come back from Chicago to start a business to, cater to their own community, and they can't because of vampires. But truth be told, if you really look at the movie, the business was doomed to fail because, and this is the part that a lot of people aren't paying attention to, which is the fact that those sharecroppers were being paid in script, which is basically no money. They were working for, oh, you can use it at the community store, right? Which is essentially what this country wants to do right now with this techno feudalism, and having gutting the government and having corporations basically own the house that you're working in, and if you lose that job, then you lose that house. This is the whole thing with private equity, and they're trying to turn America into coal mining towns, but at the cubicle, white collar job office level, and people are just allowing that to happen. But anyway, that's a whole nother conversation. I make a whole separate video about that. But one of the things that I in listening to Six to Goddesses video is that I picked up on or noticed is it's like I want to know, what are black women looking for? Because the excuses that you make when you say, oh, I have a man and I know a woman and she's big as a house and she's had a man for 30 years, which we already know a lot of these men don't have their finances in order and they're dusty, and there's all that that two-way manipulation, right? She's fat, she can't get anybody. He's broke, he can't get anybody. You know what I mean? And they basically just like low-key manipulate each other, right? I've asked for years. I'm like, show me the guy in the Mercedes Benz with a fat woman in the passenger seat. How you can never show it to me? Y'all can never show me, a fat woman in the passenger seat. Of a man with an expensive car, and everything that Six to God has said about networks and all that, and how you're a reflection of the man that you're with. And even when she pointed out that she was like, I know that none of y'all been men with money because you can't understand this simple concept. And that begs the question. It's like, if you all are so comfortable, like, in other words, if you're winning out here and you got the man that you want, and you're attracting men, and you're big as a house and all that other, like, if that's what it is, then what is the problem? Right? Like, what is the problem with the depiction if you're attracting what you want? Right? But what I see is, and I'm not saying this is every woman, but I see a bunch of women who, okay, you got your man and he's dusty and you're big as a house and y'all together, but then when it comes to global validation, then you want what is acceptable with the dusty man that you're with to be acceptable on a global stage, and that's never going to happen. You might as well get that thought out of your mind completely. That's never going to happen. And so a lot of these women that are like, yeah, we want to see that statue up there, as though that statue up there is going to serve as a promotional image for other races of men to find desirable, and other races of women to somehow be jealous of because that statue is up there and in the spotlight, when in reality it actually serves as a mockery of the stereotypical image of black women that everybody already has. You see? And so again, black women, I don't know how much black women can be helped, because they see things differently than everybody else, including their own men. Y'all don't listen to us. We can't tell y'all shit. So all you end up with is a black woman. She's sitting up there, and she's happy that she's being depicted a certain way, not realizing that it doesn't hold the same value or currency with everybody else. With everybody else. Young black men were sitting in that movie theater saying to themselves, I want me a light skinned bitch. That's what they were saying to themselves when looking at that interaction between Stack and Mary on screen. They were like, I want to be not only could they fit themselves in that situation, okay, but the whole depiction would have you say, I want that. You know what I mean? Now you had the whole interaction with Pauline and Sammy, you know what I mean? But no black men wanted to be Sammy. We didn't want to be Sammy. You know, when it comes to musical niggas that's singing and playing guitars and shit, a lot of us, like the ones we saw in high school, we thought them niggas was gay. Let's keep it a bean. You know, the niggas that do the plays and the singing and the recitals and shit, them niggas is gay. That's how we look at it. That's just how straight black men look at it. Okay? And so nobody wanted to be Sammy. And then, he was getting with Pauline. Pauline looked good when she first came on screen. Hey, we was like, hey. And it's like, which one you want? You want Mary or you want Pauline? That's what we were thinking. But so it was like, okay, but Pauline just wasn't used to great. Pauline's beauty was not used to great effectiveness in that movie. That's all we can say about it. Okay, dark-skinned woman goes in the back room and gets her pussy eaten and everything else. But it didn't have the same character development as Mary and Stack. It just did not. It didn't. She following the dude to the train station. Like, he trying to get, like, damn, nigga, like, what type of pipe you laying, right? Then on top of that, they have the event. She gets in the club. She comes there. And the doorman doesn't even recognize her. She comes there and then Stack seat like, oh goddamn bitch, like you follow me here. You know what I mean? Like she wants this dude. And let me tell you, there is a fantasy level for men when it comes to, because men, we typically got to do all the work. We got to do all the pursuing. We got to do all the chasing. It is hot when a woman has some level of obsession over you. It's hot. It's attractive. Men, we like that shit because it rarely, if ever, happens until usually you lay some serious pipe down. Then you can get the upper hand. But prior to that, nah, women women swipe left like freaking, what is it, 80% of the time, 95% of the time. You all are not interested unless the man can get you to invest emotionally in him. Then you don't want to go anywhere else because you're like, I don't want my body count to go. You get all obsessed. That's your hardwiring. That's how women function. You know what I mean? But for men, childless men are like, yeah, man, I stuck my tongue in her cooch and I laid the pipe so good that she's obsessed with me. Look at her. She just can't get enough of me. Yeah, there's a fantasy aspect to that. So that's going to have more appeal to childless men, just off of that. But between, this damn statue and the movie Sinners and this whole question of, is the mammy image appropriate for black women who in particularly are trying to have corrective promotion? Are you all still trying to have corrective promotion, or are you trying to run around and be diverse with it? Okay, because to be diverse with the image that is already your negative stereotype doesn't make any sense. That makes no sense. You know what I mean? It's like Corvette had the reputation of being what? A successful plumber's car, right? And then what did they do with the Corvette? What changed with the C8 Corvette? They were like, we're going to make a mid-engine Corvette. You only see mid-engines on vehicles that are essentially supercars, Ferraris, Lamborghinis, and they're like, nah, we're going to take the engine and we're going to put it in the middle of the car. The reason why they put it in the middle of the car is because it causes the car to be more balanced. The weight distribution is more balanced, and that's what makes the car more of a super sport car, because on a if you have the engine in the front, then all the weight, all your braking, everything is in the front of the vehicle as opposed to in the center of the vehicle, which is where you would ideally want it, right? But Corvette was trying, their goal was to change the image. And it's like, yo, don't buy a Lambo, buy this C8 Corvette. And there's a lot of people that, because of that mid-engine design, there's a lot of people that have no issue going out there and buying a Corvette and feeling just as special riding around in the C8 Corvette as they would riding around in the Lamborghini. You know what I mean? Let's face it. If you had to pull up to the club in a C8 Corvette versus pulling up in the club in a Lamborghini, yeah, most people will probably go with the Lamborghini. But the C8 Corvette, are you gonna feel a loss? Are you gonna feel like your eyes aren't gonna be on you when you pull up in the C8 Corvette? Like, get the fuck out of here! Come on, it's a mid-engine vehicle. And I'm just saying, I'm just using that as a comparison to the whole idea that if black women want to change their image, you can't sit there and be like, okay, and we're going to bring the mammy image with us. We're going to bring, Hattie McDaniel from Gone with the Wind with us. You know what I'm saying? Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Like, this is what they said about you to put you down. Why are you dragging this image with you? Yeah, but what about the plus size women? What about the diversity? What about, oh my God. And again, because you have so many mothers in the black community at such a very early age, that's how they view it. And the childless black women, the women that have no responsibilities, they can go and freaking go to the gym for 3 hours and then leave and then get themselves a iced latte from Starbucks and shit like that. Like, those black women don't have that. They're in the minority. They're in the minority. And the other thing is, I don't understand the purpose of sitting there and using like a big woman saying, I know big women that have men, and those men are dusty, right? Those men don't have it together. But then you lament over the idea that the high value men are not the ones that you're getting, right? Like, do you care about the standards of the high value men, or do you care about the standards of the men that don't have it together, right? The men that don't have money. Like, I don't know why you conflate those two things for argument purposes, right? If you're trying to get the man that has, the Mercedes Benz and has the business and has the money and the resources and the whole lifestyle, then why aren't you catering to what those men want? Why are you using the justification of what the guy living in Mobile, Alabama wants? You know what I mean? Why are you catering to the Desmond Hatchets? I don't understand. Why are you using that as justification? It makes no sense, because I mean, if you're comfortable with that, then okay, fine. But again, just keep in mind, when it comes to the men who are networked, the men who are quote unquote high value, and then when you want to talk about you're seeking global validation, like what I called out Karazin for, I'm like, you want global validation? You want, first off, it's not even in the cards of other races of men to elevate black women, because you can't make them. Your wombs don't make them. So it's not in the cards for them, to elevate you. It's just not. Right? But they're most certainly not going to elevate. And I'm not saying that you don't have other races of men attracted to black women. There are plenty of other races of men who are attracted to black women, but what they're not attracted to are big, heavy set black women. They're not attracted to that. So it doesn't matter how much you put that up on a pedestal or make a statue about it. That's not what men are attracted to. Men who have options, men who have resources, they're not attracted to that. I don't know how many times we have to say that. And if you want to go and you want to bring up some dusty dude as to that you're with, I'm like, to what? Win the argument? You're not going to win the war with that. You're not going to win global validation with that. I mean, you're just not. You're not even going to win with the high value men within your own community. You're not. So it's just something that I think people need to keep in mind when these comparisons are being made. Because, like I said, when I had the conversation with Captain Solo, I mean, we were going back and forth, and just because he hadn't seen the movie, so I was breaking this shit down. And what came out of the conversation was, nah, these comparisons shouldn't even have been made, man. Because Michael B. Jordan, his character with you know Stack and Mary versus Smoke and Annie. You got a childless couple and you got a married couple that lost a child. That comparison should have never been made. But I understand why it ends up being made because of all of the other issues that linger in the background, the long, history of colorism and self-hatred in the black community, and the anti-dark skinned black womanness that exists in the black community. And the thing is, I'm gonna tell you what irritates me about it, because I hate the fact that I hate when people conflate things, right? It's a conflation. Like example, it's what is this from? It's from I'm thinking of confounding. Confounding is when, like, let's say I was trying to do research and on how much coal dust affects like some how coal dust affects a person's development of lung cancer, right? And so I'm examining a bunch of coal miners, and I'm examining, how many of them, develop cancer over time, right? But then I also have a bunch of them who are also smokers. So now it's like, well, is it because of the coal dust that they got, miner's lung, and then they developed cancer? Or is it because of the fact that they were smoking? Well, if they're smoking and they work in a coal mine, I can't tell which one. Is it the cigarette? Is it the carcinogens from the cigarette? Or is it due to the coal dust? Like, which one is it? Right? That's what confounding is. And when it comes to the arguments that sisters make about colorism, there's in not in every case, but in a lot of cases, there's a lot of confounding going on. Black women will say colorism and the woman has a baby. Black women will say colorism and the woman is overweight. And they'll, like, even when I first came online, India Irie versus Alicia Keys. And India Irie, we all know, is an older woman, and Alicia Keys is a younger woman, and Alicia Keys was, I mean, actually, India Irie doesn't have a bad body at all. But the women were like, and you must choose, right? That's been an ongoing problem, where I mean black women wouldn't even choose dark skinned black women who would essentially be conventionally beautiful. Like, why India Irie and Alicia Keys? Why not Jill Marie Jones and Alicia Keys? You know what I'm saying? Why not Normani and Alicia Keys? Why not Kiki Palmer and Alicia Keys? You know what I'm saying? Why you know somebody that arguably people don't consider conventionally, beautiful. Right? I mean, that's what most of her music, is about. Right? Why do that? Why sabotage your own dark skin self hate litmus test? And see, that used to show me that there's something more to it. There's something else going on. There's the lack of confidence, self hatred, or just trying to prove, and that men are colorist and self hating. And I literally think it's done intentionally, because dark skinned black women don't want there to be an actual standard for their beauty. If they can say it's colorism, if they can say it's self hatred, if they can say it's anything else, then there's not anything that they need to do or can do to change that fact. Right? It's not, losing weight is not going to make them more desirable. Any of these things, it's not going to help them. You see, it's not going to help them. So with that, then the onus is all on the men, or whoever the observer is that is judging their beauty. It's not their fault. It's just the world hates them, and that's all that there is to it. But time and time again, I see black women who consistently do not want to put their best foot forward. They don't want to put the slim and in shape and attractive black woman. They don't want to present. I'm like, why aren't you using her? Why are you using this chick over here? Why? Like, why are you doing that? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like freaking give me an unattractive white woman. The real pale woman in Game of Thrones. You know who I'm talking about. Has a very shrewish face. Sarah Jessica Parker. I mean, there's plenty of white women. Who was that white woman? It was like she had the gap in her teeth. She was like in the 80s. I always thought that was an ugly woman. She was like a comedian. She had a real big gap. She did Playboy. Ooh, what was her name? She was just not an attractive woman, but they used to have her all over the place, and I used to be like, why? It was kind of like how people, who's the porn star that causes major divide? Sarah J. If you don't know what Sarah J looks like, go look at Sarah J. Man, I have heard black guys and white guys, yeah, she was thick and had a body, but her face, man, some guys were just like, I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. And it's just like I don't understand why people got to go to the extreme. Like the light skinned woman that you grab wasn't the extreme. The light skinned woman that gets grabbed is always this conventionally beautiful, woman. Why aren't you grabbing, like, what is it? All of a sudden, you don't know what a conventionally beautiful black woman is? Right? But then in other conversations, let any one of those conventionally beautiful black women get with a white man. Oh my God, she's beautiful. And look what black men are throwing away. Look at Kerry Washington. Okay, why wasn't it Kerry Washington versus Alicia Keys? Why did you go India Arie? Right? And the thing is to me, I think a lot of black women know which black women are not, you know, deemed attractive. And what they try to do, and this is why a lot of black men say this is an ugly girl argument, because they'll go and they'll grab the woman there's plenty of black women that look better than her that are dark skinned, and they'll grab the woman that is not the one that gets teased, the one that never got a date. They'll grab her and then they'll try to put her on a pedestal and act like the pedestal is going to elevate her, and then make everybody say, "Oh, well, maybe you was right." Like, no, it doesn't fucking work like that. I can't explain that enough. It's so irritating and frustrating to watch sisters do this shit, because they shoot themselves in the foot, because after a while it just looks like it's like, oh, sisters they just want niggas to find ugly women attractive. That's what they want. Dark skinned women, that's what they want. And then again, the only time they want to acknowledge a truly beautiful dark skinned woman is when they're with a white man, or when they're with some other race of man. And then they're going to sit there and pretend like this was a woman that black men were kicking out of their bed because they're so colorist. And I'm like, how come you didn't use the same woman that you're praising that is with the white guy? How come you didn't use her for your self-hate litmus test? How come you didn't use her for your, this dark-skinned woman versus this light-skinned woman? Why is the light-skinned woman always perfect? She's always fit. You don't even use heavy-set light-skinned women. You know what I'm saying? There's hit light-skinned women out here, but you don't never use them whenever you're trying to prove self-hatred. You never use them. Right? There's something going on with sisters where it's like, I want to support y'all, talking to dark skinned women, I want to support y'all, but man, y'all be sabotaging yourselves for no reason. Y'all be sabotaging yourselves. You know what I mean? Like a good contest, a good comparison would have been who was it? It was Six the Goddess versus what's her name? The King chick. What's her name? Was it Melissa King? What's her name? I can't think of what her name is off the top of my head. You know what I'm talking about. They got the YouTube channel. And I think King, she won over Six the Goddess, which I thought was bullshit. But again, that would be a better argument for black women to say, see, it's colorism. It's colorism. But the stupid thing is like, it was still, people were bringing up shit that was totally unrelated. They were bringing up King's, her surgeries that she got on her face. And then when it came to Six the Goddess, they were, oh, she's a stripper. What the fuck does her being a stripper have to do with the way that the bitch looks? I mean, just goddamn. And then you get these black men that get in all just a bunch of girly shit. They just get into some girly, they get in their feels and girly shit, and then they start, oh, she don't look like shit. Why? Why does she? What do you mean she doesn't look like shit? That don't even make any sense. Oh, she doesn't look like shit. Why? Well, she would never sleep with me. Oh my god! So because she would never sleep with you, all of us now she's a -5. Get the man, if you don't get the fuck out of my face with this bullshit, and so you got a little bit of that going on as well, on the men's end. So you can never have a true conversation about what is attractive and what is not, and what is beautiful and what is not. At the end of the day, I think women should strictly pay attention to the men with resources and what they pick. That's what they should pay attention to. And this is without getting into all the stuff about the attitudes and everything else and all that. Just the matriarchy, the feminism. I got a video coming with that, and I got receipts, on exposing, and I'll save that for later. But I'm going to expose, this whole thing about, women oversharing online and how that affects things. And again, it's like if a brother decides to go over the fence, he's with another race of woman. You know what I mean? But you have all these other issues with the patriarchy and male leadership and everything else, and he's choosing another race of woman. Yeah, it looks like colorism, 100%, because pretty much every other race of woman is lighter than a black woman. Okay? It looks like colorism, but maybe he's going over there because of peace of mind, because you're just talking about everything that you're not willing to do. Now, I'm not bringing that up for this video. I will save that for another video. But sisters got to y'all got to make up y'all mind, cause clearly there's some division in the ranks, when it comes to this. With black men, we don't really have this problem. I mean, we don't. We just care about whether the depiction that is up there is masculine, and we don't care whether it's street or whether it's non-street. All we want to see is masculine black men. We can deal with the other stuff later. Okay, but as long as you're not depicting us as some gay dude, we generally don't care. Okay, all you gotta be, as long as the brother is masculine, because that's what that's what we think about. If you're masculine, you got some muscles, you got some size on you, you got a deep voice, you carry yourself like a man, you're gonna get some bitches. That's a positive depiction for us. That's what we consider it. But with black women, y'all, oh man, I mean it's like y'all go out of y'all way not to elevate the prettiest dark skinned black women that are in the community. You all do that, independent of us. You all do that. And it makes no sense. Just like the woman that I posted at the very beginning of this video. There'd be a whole bunch of black women that would have a problem with her because she's too petite, she's too feminine, she's too, oh my god, she just looks like a white girl but black, and her whole happy demeanor, go lucky demeanor, it just looks like we don't like it. Make her the standard, and I guarantee you it's gonna be fucking problems with sisters. And especially the fact that girl that you see at the beginning of this video don't have no kids. She's not overweight. Okay, she doesn't have the stress that a lot of mothers have. She's in the 39%. That's the population that she's in the black community. She is in the smallest demographic in the black community. The greatest demographic in the black community are mothers. The second greatest demographic in the black community are childless men. The third greatest demographic in the black community are fathers. And then the last greatest demographic in the black community are childless women. So you can see with those type of numbers and that type of gap, is one of the primary reasons why black men and black women don't see eye to eye. And, when people say, well, why are there so many mothers? Why? Because black women are sharing black men. That's why. Because you have guys that have multiple baby mamas. Future has 8 baby mamas. That's 8 women down and 1 dude. That's why. But the vast majority of black men don't have any kids. They are childless. Okay, everybody starts out childless and then they enter fatherhood. And unfortunately, you have many black women under the age of 20 who are entering motherhood at an early age unnecessarily. It's unnecessary. It's not like there's resources there. It's not like people got their life planned out and that's why they're having babies. No, these babies are coming into the world as a byproduct of just fucking. And that's just the truth. And I got a young man, and I'll put that at the end of this video. I got a young man in a clip, and he lays it out. He goes in on his parents. And it's just a clip. It's just a short clip. But he goes in on the parents saying, man, if I knew y'all was going to be poor, man, y'all should have just left me up in the room, man. Like, who the fuck goes out here? I got to experience all this shit. I got to experience life, you know, because y'all didn't get y'all shit together. I got to experience this fucked up life with no resources because y'all ain't get y'all shit together. You know, so, I mean, the way that black women and, you know, the guys that they're having babies with are bringing kids in the world is completely fucked up. But because these relationships fail a lot of times, and then these women end up back on the market, these women are making essentially childless women demands, you know, for themselves to have representation and be depicted. But the goal here should not be to promote mothers. The goal should be to promote, you know, fit, feminine, childless black women. That should be the ideal, not mothers. But, you know, that's where we are as a community. And, you know, the fact that the majority of black men are childless only reinforces why, you know, we have such a difference in communication or difference in understanding, you know, of one another and what our wants and desires are. So anyway, that's all I got to say. That's my video, SWP. Don't forget to comment, share, like, and subscribe.
Y'all definitely owe us some. Stop saying that we entitled. A child cannot be entitled. You chose to have us. We didn't actually be here, so therefore you owe it to us. As a matter of fact, when I was in the womb, if I would have known that y'all was going to be poor, I would have never came out. Make me go through the misery and make me go through hell in life because you ain't get your shit together before you decide to have kids. Why would you bring a kid to your miserable world?
On the scene, Jamie Blaney, whole screen. Check a boy, Louis V. I'm so fresh and so clean. Stuff them bands in my jeans, slap them 30s in them things. Pull the trigger, let it sing. Then go smoke a Russian cream.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Hello?
Where
Where we at? Oh, you want to know where I'm at? We outside!